Hey guys, good morning. We're going to talk about some essential sourdough tools that help me get really consistent loaves and that really improved my loaves as I was learning how to make sourdough. So let's get started. Let me tell you all about it. I'm going to rush through it as fast as possible so I can keep this video short because I have quite a few. Okay, first is how I maintain my sourdough. I love these weck jars. You don't have to have a weck jar, this brand, but I'll tell you why I like it. It has pretty straight sides, so it's easy to use my spatula and get and scrape all my sides down. It doesn't have a bunch of ridges here. It just has this single ridge. On a mason jar, there's lots of ridges, and the sourdough gets, as it dries out, which is natural, it gets stuck in there and it's extremely hard to clean. So let me tell you also, I love to have 2 jars. About every 1 or 2 weeks, you get a buildup of starter on the outside, and you want to keep that clean. You also want to prevent mold at all costs. So you want to switch jars into a clean, sanitized jar, and I like having 2. It works out for me. As far as my discard goes, this is what I do to keep it mess free. I don't use a lot of discard recipes. Of course, if I do want and need a discard for a recipe, I'm just gonna get it out of here. But I use a wide mouth cup. I put a gallon Ziploc bag. I open it up. I take out my excess starter when I'm ready to feed, and I put it in. I scrape my spatula along the side. I zip it up and I set it aside, or when I fill it up, I just pull it out and throw it in the trash. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to wash a dish, and I don't mind the cost of an extra Ziploc bag a week. I feel like the cost isn't an issue here, and it's definitely worth it for me I don't like the mess. You know what I'm saying? Okay, a Danish whisk. This is important. A Danish whisk is great because it really mixes your shaggy dough thoroughly. If you want to use a fork, go ahead, but you're going to bend your forks. I just promise you. You can obviously use your hands, which is what God gave us, and you can get a really thorough mix with your hands. And if you want to do that, go ahead and do that. I don't use my hands because it messes up my manicure. It dries your hands out and my cuticles, and I don't enjoy sourdough starter on my hands and washing my hands like that. You can never quite, I don't know, get it all off. The reason why I love a long Danish whisk is also really important. I hear no one talking about. I just don't, I think it's because no one uses it for what I use it for, but let me give you a huge tip. When you're maintaining your sourdough starter and you're mixing your sourdough starter, I have this to scrape my edges down, but I use this to stir. I put my flour and my water in, and I put this in and I stir it and I mix it and I turn my bowl and I see that I'm getting all the dry flour out. And when I'm done, I take that's it, it's clean. Like, I clean it off with a paper towel, and then I use that same paper towel after I scrape my sides down to clean my spatula off, and then they're done. I throw one little half of paper towel away, and I feel like that's a really mess-free way, and you really utilize that tool for dual purposes. You know what I'm saying? So you should try that when you buy your dough whisk. A lot of them come in a package with a lot of, like, a sourdough starter kit, and the dough whisk is short, and in that case you can't use it to mix your starter. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that one. That was a huge tip when I started to do that. Another thing are gloves, disposable gloves. I just really quick, I use nitrile, and I always get a medium size. You want something that fits your hand really tight, because when you doing your stretch and folds, the dough grabs onto your glove a little bit, and will pull it off, and then it'll, like, be loose when you're doing your stretch and folds. And no, no one's got time for that. Get a glove that fits your hand. I have small hands. I get a medium. All right. The one size fits most is a little too big for me and my hands, but it's something that fits your hands. I also like to get a glove that doesn't rip when I pull or get snagged on my rings. That's not a problem for most people, but for me it is. And let me, while I have you, This brand right here, this is Venom Steel. You got to get this brand. I don't have a link. Okay, next is temperature. The temperature during your bulk fermentation is very important. I use a food gauge, a temp gauge, and I try to keep my dough in between 72 and 76 degrees. If I have to move it around my kitchen to a warmer place because it's getting too cold, then I do that. Sometimes I even put it under my grow lights for a little while to warm it up. But even under my grow lights, it can get over 80 degrees, so I have to watch it. I never keep it on my countertop because the countertop pulls the heat out of the bowl, and you need the heat so that your bulk fermentation stays like on schedule. Okay, on heat protection, I have welding gloves. I just upgraded to welding gloves. I use a Dutch oven to cook my bread in, and the temperature on that is 500 to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets really hot. What happens when you use regular oven mitts is that the temperature just melts through any little silicone lining or anything, as you see, and it'll burn the shiz out of your hand. I'm telling you. Next, I have something that doesn't seem essential, but it is. My apron. It doesn't just keep me clean. In the kitchen, obviously, you get dirty, but this is actually heat protection for me. This is a Henley and Bennett apron. Any apron is gonna protect you, but this one is pretty heat resistant. I almost caught myself on fire once, leaning over too hot of a stove, and ever since then, I upgraded to a proper apron, and I love this thing. Next, everyone asks me how I get those beautiful designs on the outside of my loaves, and they always ask me if it's a stencil, but it is not. I use a bread lawn, which is a razor blade, and it just has this, it's on this wheel. You can get ones that are on like a handle, but this helps me get really intricate little detailed designs, and I love it so much. I used to just use a razor blade from like Home Depot, and I didn't have as much control, and I couldn't get as detailed and consistent lines until I upgraded to this. This was very, very cheap, so it's definitely worth the investment. Okay, for my final tip of the day, all I can think of for now, I have a food scale. This is the KD 8000. It is light, pretty small. I had to upgrade because I needed to weigh heavier batches of bread, you know what I'm saying? But I started with this $7.99 Amazon scale, and I used it for a year. I loved it. You have to have a scale. Let me tell you why. When you use a cup to measure flour, when you scoop it and then level it out, every time you go back in and make a scoop, you're getting a different weight of flour. And so your end product, whatever you're making, is going to be different every single time. Some people will pack their flour against the wall of their container and then pull it up. Think about how much flour was packed in that compared to somebody that just freely like scoops into a big container, you know what I mean? And it's all airy. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. Consistency is my point. Scales are important, and I have consistent loaves because I use a scale. And you know, am I exact with my scale weights? No. Like if I'm supposed to have 500 grams and it's 505, not the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? But it really keeps me pretty close, and it's very important. All right, that's it for today. That's all I can think of. I'm sure I'll come up with another one some other day to give you some more tips, but that's it for now.